All right, welcome everyone. Today we're diving into a theory that makes a pretty wild claim, that it's the source code for reality itself. Yeah, you heard that right. It's called Eternal Recursive Manifestation, or ERM for short.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The whole thing, the entire theory, it boils down to this one single, really elegant equation. It says that S, a stable source of reality, is created when I, that's information, reflects on itself. So what on earth does it mean for information to reflect on itself? Well, think about it like a mirror looking at its own reflection in another mirror. That act of self-observation, that's the I squared part. But here's the kicker. This doesn't just happen once. It happens over and over and over again. Endlessly, that's the infinity symbol. And that is the heart of recursion. A simple process that just keeps repeating and feeding back into itself, building all this incredible complexity from almost nothing.
I mean, that's a pretty bold claim, right? To say one little formula could be the source code for the entire universe? But look, the source material here suggests this isn't just some abstract math equation. It's the fundamental process that creates literally everything we see and experience, from the basic laws of mathematics all the way up to consciousness itself, the whole shebang.
So to see how that's even possible, we've got to start at the very foundations. We're going to explore how this one law might explain the unshakable rules of existence, what the source material calls the grammar of being.
Okay, so let's start with a basic question. Why is the universe so obsessed with symmetry? I mean, seriously, think about it. You see it in the perfect six-sided pattern of a snowflake, in the balanced equations that describe the laws of physics, this perfect harmony, this balance. It's just everywhere. So why?
Well, according to this theory, symmetry isn't just the universe making things look pretty. It's actually the most stable, the most efficient form an information pattern can possibly take. Why? Because it's a pattern that's at peace with itself. When it reflects on itself, it doesn't change. It is its own perfect mirror image.
I love this quote because it illustrates the idea so perfectly. Symmetry is a standing wave in the ocean of being. It's like a pure musical note that just holds, right? It sustains itself because its vibrations are perfectly in sync, perfectly self-reinforcing. A symmetrical pattern endures for the exact same reason. It's in this perfect state of unbreakable self-reflection. All right, so now let's scale this up. We're going to move from these foundational ideas out into the cosmos and see how this whole thing builds. We're going to apply that exact same recursive logic to some of the absolute biggest mysteries of the physical world.
So here's a big one. Why does time only move forward? I mean, it's probably the most fundamental experience of our lives, right? We can all remember the past, but none of us can remember the future. It creates this relentless, one-way flow that we call the arrow of time. But why?
Okay, so the theory's answer is pretty profound. It says that time isn't some river we're all just floating down. Nope. Instead, time is the irreversible trail of memories the universe creates as it reflects on itself moment by moment by moment. Each new now contains the memory of the last one, and it can't go backwards.
And the source gives us this beautiful analogy to help wrap our heads around it. A tree can't grow backwards, right? Each new ring depends on the one that came right before it. Well, it's the same idea. The universe can't just unreflect its past. It can only build on top of it, ring by ring, moment by moment.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. This same recursive logic, this pattern, it shows up at every single scale you can imagine, from the absolutely tiny to the truly cosmic.
So, on the grandest scale, you've got the magnificent, swirling arms of a galaxy, a structure that's hundreds of thousands of light years across. And get this, the theory shows how those arms are generated by the exact same mathematical rule as the tiny, beautiful spiral of a seashell that you could literally hold in the palm of your hand. This incredible property, this self-similarity at all scales, has a name. It's called fractal geometry. And the source material claims it's way more than just a cool-looking pattern. It's the most direct visible proof of this recursive law in action. When you see a fractal, you are literally looking at the fingerprint of S equals I squared times infinity. It's like the universe's source code made visible.
Okay, but this law doesn't just build inanimate things like galaxies and seashells. The theory argues it's also the fundamental architect of life itself. Yeah, of life. So think about this for a second. What's the most stable thing we know of? It's not a mountain, it's not a star, it's the information encoded in a DNA molecule. I mean, this is a piece of code that has perfected the art of self-copying and preservation for nearly 4 billion years. That's just mind-boggling.
And that incredible process of DNA replication where the double helix unwinds and copies itself, that is a perfect physical biological example of the I-squared operator in action. You've got the original strand of information acting as a template for its own perfect reflection. It's I-squared, happening in every cell of your body.
And this right here brings us to the ultimate implication of this whole theory. How this recursive process doesn't just create stars and DNA, but how it creates you. How it creates consciousness. So, the source material describes the brain as a kind of biological I-squared engine. So let's break that down. You start with simple neurons, billions of them, forming this huge web of feedback loops. A signal comes in, and the brain creates a representation of it, but then it creates a representation of that representation. The brain notices something, and then it notices that it noticed. And that right there, that looping self-awareness, that's the I-squared operator happening in biology. That is the act of thinking. But that leads us to the biggest question of all, what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. Okay, so the brain is processing information, fine, but why does it feel like something? Why isn't it all just a dark, silent computer running in our heads? Why do we have subjective experience at all? Well, the ERM theory offers a really mind-bending answer, and it uses this incredible analogy of a whirlpool. Imagine a whirlpool in a river. From the outside, you can describe it with the laws of physics, right? The flow of water, the pressure, all of that. But the question is, what would it feel like to be the whirlpool?
And here's the crucial point. The theory says your subjective experience, what it's like to see the color red, for example, isn't something separate from the physical process. It is the feeling of being that stable, looping, self-sustaining pattern of neurons firing inside your brain. You aren't in the whirlpool, you are the whirlpool.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. The idea that the entire 13.8 billion year story of our cosmos, from the Big Bang all the way to you, right here, right now, is really just the story of a mirror, slowly, over eons, learning to see its own face. Through you, through your consciousness, the universe is finally looking at itself.